Hello, guys. Welcome to this session of Inside IIM VARC Acer Lecture 4. And here we are going to discuss the two fabulous RCs from CAT 2019. The thing with this particular RCs was that these RCs were very easy to read. It was breezy read as far as the RCs itself were concerned. But then on the hindsight, when you go to the questions, you find out they were not so easy because the options were really close. And hence, as CAT has been notoriously tough in setting up such options, how will you go about reading this particular RC and find the right answer? This is how what we'll be learning in this particular lecture. The magic of squatter cities. Now, mind you, squatter cities, it's a negative connotation over here. When I say negative connotation, if you go and see the real meaning of what is squatter cities, you'll get to know that the cities in which people live, in which they don't have any legal rights. So basically, they have settled it. Slums can be example of squatter cities, can be one of the examples. So actually, people don't have any legal rights, but they settle. So the magic of squatter cities is that they are improved steadily and gradually by their residents. And now the RC begins in such a tone that there is a magic associated with squatter cities. And what is that magic? They're improved steadily, slowly, and gradually by the residents, the people who are living in it. They are the ones who improve it. To a planner size, these cities look chaotic. So, as far as the planners are concerned, those who plan the city development or who are responsible for developing cities, to them, these cities, squatter cities, look chaotic. Obviously, because for them, they will be following a particular structure, right approach. For them, it is really chaotic. I trend as a biologist, and to my eye, they look organic. So, what does this refers to? The author of the passage is a biologist, and to his eye, the squatter cities look organic. And now the idea has been set that the author is in favor of the squatter cities, and now further he will give on building conclusions and evidences in order to support this particular line, that why does he find them organic, or for that matter, why does he support squatter cities. Okay, let's go ahead. Squatter cities are also unexpectedly green. They have maximum density of 1 million people per square mile in some areas of Mumbai. Now it says squatter cities are also unexpectedly green, because unexpectedly is the word which has to be taken into account, because people will think that the squatter cities won't be green because they aren't planned, but then again it is contrary to the imagination that they are unexpectedly green, because a large amount of people are living in a very small area. As I said, they have maximum density, 1 billion people per square mile in some areas of Mumbai, and have minimum energy and material use, because so much people compacted in such a smaller area. So that is something which caters to a reduction in energy usage and material uses. People get around by foot, bicycle, rickshaw, or the universal shared taxi. This is how they reduce the energy, and material uses also gets down. Not everything is efficient in slums, though. Now the idea is changing. So even though the squatter cities are very lucrative, not everything is efficient in slums. In the Brazilian favelas, where electricity is stolen and therefore free, people leave their lights on all day. So now the author proves it, that why does he say that not everything is efficient in Islam? Because in Brazilian favelas, what they do is that they steal electricity, and the reason is that they don't have to pay the bills. They keep their light open, and it's a waste of energy. But in most slums, this recycling is literally a way of life. Now again, the idea is changing. Even though not everything is efficient in slum, but something is efficient. In most slums, Recycling is literally a way of life. People go about the normal business of living by using and thriving on recycled products, or by using recycling. They earn their living also by recycling. We'll see further. The Dharavi slum in Mumbai has 400 recycling units and 30,000 rack pickers. Now it says why is recycling it is a way of life. 6,000 tons of rubbish are sorted every day. 6,000 tons, that is a big number. In 2007, The Economist reported that in Vietnam and Mozambique, waves of gleaners sift the sweeping of Hanoi street, just as Mozambican children pick over the rubbish of Maputo's main tip. Now, see, in some everywhere in cat passages or some passages, there would be one or two lines which would completely go above you. So, as a normal person, when I'm reading it in the first go, this is something which is completely out of blue, what it is talking about. So, what I have to do as a person is that just see that in economist something has been quoted up and forget what it is specifically trying to say. If it is asked in the question, we will come back again and read it. But as of now, there is no time to waste just because we are not getting this particular line. Move ahead. Every city in Asia and Latin America has an industry based on gathering up old cardboard boxes. Now it becomes very clear what it is referring to in Vietnam and Mozambique. It is just building on the idea that every city in Asia and Latin America has this big industry based on gathering old cardboard boxes, or for that matter, the kabadi walas as we normally tout in India. Now, in his 1985 article, Carl Thorpe made a statement that stills jars with most people. This is very important. This particular line, still jars. It is not a jars, but it is jars. A jar would have been still sound familiar, or they agree to it, but still jars means they are contrary to it. So Carl Thorpe made a statement in 1985 which people even today can't relate to. And what was the statement? The city is the most environmentally benign form of human settlement. Each city dwellers consume less land, less energy, less water, and produces less pollution than his counterpart in the settlement of lower densities. This is what Calthrop said, that look, city is very efficient because it consumes less land, less energy, less water, and less pollution as compared to the other people living in other parts of areas, because they're consuming more. Green Manhattan was the inflammatory title of a 2004 New Yorker article by David Owen. By the most significant measures, he wrote, New York is the greenest community in the United States and one of the greenest cities in the world. Now, now again, a second difference of the another author is coming, and that is David Owen. David Owen went ahead and said that he wrote an article with the title "Green Manhattan," and he said that New York is the greenest community in the United States and one of the most greenest cities in the world. Now the some part of passage is missing. You see the three dots over here. The some part of passage is missing, and now the furthermore the idea is built. The key to New York's relative environmental benignity is its extreme compactness. Very, 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 very important. The whole essence lie here. So, what is the key for New York's environment being so and so? Because it is very compact. A lot of people are living in a very small area. Now, again, few parts of the passage is missing. Placing 1.5 million people on a 23 square mile island sharply reduces their opportunities to be wasteful. Very correct, very correct. If you are putting 1.5 million people on a 23 square mile island, so it's a reference to New York, what they're saying. Half a million people, that means 5 lakh people, half a million people on a 23 square mile island, they live there. So it sharply reduces their opportunity to waste the things which they have been bestowed with. He went on to note that this very compactness forces people to live in the world's most energy efficient apartment building. So this compactness, this is what Owen said, is mainly responsible for people to live in most energy efficient apartment buildings, because it is the scarcity is what is making them conserve things. Urban density allows half of humanity to live on 2.8% of the land. Very important again line. Urban density allows half of humanity to live on 2.8% of the land. Very, very important. So they're living on just 2.8% of the land. They are consuming less amount of resources available, and then in fact they're contributing to nature. Consider just the infrastructure efficiencies. According to a 2004 UN report, the concentration of population and enterprise in urban areas greatly reduces the unit cost of piped water, sewers, drains, roads, electricity, garbage collection, transport, healthcare, and schools. Now, the further argument is built up that how living in cities is more energy efficient and more efficient to the overall environment in what particular ways, and those examples are being given as per the UN report of 2004. The nationally subsidized city of Manaus. Now, again, the reference is being made to Manaus, city in northern Brazil. Nationally subsidized is an important word. Answers the question of how to stop deforestation. Now, what does Manaus answer? How to stop deforestation? Give people decent jobs. It says. How to stop deforestation? Give people decent jobs. Then they can afford houses and gain security. So basically, what is the idea? Uh, if you want to avoid this deforestation, give people job, and if they will have job, they will have their own houses, and with their own houses they will be more conservative towards the environment, and the trees will be not be cut on this large scale. 100,000 people who would otherwise be deforesting the jungle around Manaus are now prospering in town, making such things as mobile phones and televisions. So that is particularly aspect of the city is that look, you give people the job, they'll get the buildings and apartments, they'll gain the security out of it, and then they won't be going ahead and destroying the forest. Of course, the fast growing cities are far from an unmitigated good. Now this is very, very important line. The author says even though there are various advantages associated with fast growing cities, but there is something which is not good also. They concentrate crime, pollution, disease, and injustice as much as business, innovation, education, and entertainment. So the both pros and cons exist. Now some part of passage is again being cut, but if they are overall a net good for those who move in there, it is because cities offer more than just odd jobs. It is very important line. But there is a net overall good effect what city is creating, because cities not only providing jobs, they are transformative. They are transformative. See, in the cat passages, the last paragraphs becomes very important, because at most of the times the whole gist of the paragraph is mentioned in the last couple of lines. Here also it says, because city offer more than just jobs, they are transformative. Transformative in what sense? Now it is described. In the slums, as well as the office towers and leafy suburbs, the progress is from hick to metropolitan to cosmopolitan. Fabulous, fabulous line. So there is a cultural transformation as far as our living in city itself is concerned. They say they are transformative in slums as well as offices, towers, and leafy suburbs. Now we'll go to the question and see how we deal about it. Which one of the following statements would undermine the author's stand regarding the greeniness of cities? Now let's go one by one. The author's claim regarding greeniness of the city. The compactness of big cities in West increases the incidence of violent crime. So here the violent crime has been mentioned. This will straight away make me reject this option, because it has nothing to do with the greeniness of cities. This option is eliminated. Sorting through rubbish contributes to the rapid spread of disease in the slums. We have to find out which would undermine the author's stand. Okay, regarding the greenliness of city. So, rapid spread of disease. Disease is not associated with greenliness. This particular option is also eliminated. Now see the next one. The high density of cities leads to an increase in carbon dioxide and global warming. I like this option, the first word, sir. Because increase in carbon dioxide and global warming will lead to reduction in greenness in the cities itself, and this would undermine what the author wants to say. So as of now, I'm okay with this particular option. Let me read D. Over the last decade, the cost of utilities has been increasing for the city dwellers. So what? Let it increase. What it has to do with the greenness of the city? It is also false. It is out of scope. It will be suicide to mark this option. Only one option is correct. That is C. Go ahead and mark this. And it was a very easy question, which was presented in CAT. So there will be some low-hanging fruits. One should definitely go ahead and catch them. All of, according to the passage, squatter cities are environmental friendly for all of the following reasons, except we have to find out what is one thing which does not contribute to the environmental friendliness of squatter cities. Their transportation and energy is efficient. It is clearly mentioned in the first paragraph that people use public transport. They recycle material perfectly in sync with their environmental friendly. They sort out garbage perfectly fine again because they can sort out garbage and they keep environment friendly clean. The streets are kept clean. Now, most of the people would be confused between C and D. That is what happened on the day of exam also. People were confused what to mark, C or D. Now, go by the clear logic. According to the passage, quarter cities are environmental friendly for all of the following reasons. So, nowhere the streets are kept clean is mentioned. It has been mentioned that at one point in the passage, that look, waves of gleaners shift the sweepings of Hanoi street, just as Mozambique children pick over the rubbish of Maputo's main tip. So it is just not that they are keeping their streets clean, which is contributing to the overall environmental friendliness of the city itself. So this option can be eliminated on this particular line, and this sort out garbage is something which will contribute to environmental friendliness. So only option which does not contribute to the environmental friendliness of the city is their streets are kept clean. This particular option, go ahead and mark it. Most people got it wrong, but then if you go logically, think deeply, you will get it right. We can infer that Calthrope's statement still jars with most people because most people. Now, still jars is again a very important word. Still jars. So it's a negative connotation word. Why does it still jars with most people? Because most people won't consider city as something which is like say very clean. If we get this particular option, we'll go ahead straight away and mark this. Regard cities as a place of disease and crime. Wrong. This option is clearly wrong. Do not consider city to be eco-friendly places. I like this option. I like this option. I'll I want to mark it, but I'll look the other two option also. Do not regard cities as a good place to live in. This is wrong. Consider city to be very crowded and polluted. Now again, for some people, they'll say that the option B and D are very close. It's not close. Calthrop never mentioned about population. He only mentioned about eco-friendliness. So crowded is something that has been added as an extra bit to catch you up, and people would have gone ahead and marked this particular option and would have fetched a negative mark. So the option will be B1. Do not consider cities to be eco-friendly places. You mark this and you get it right. Let us move to the next question. In the context of the passage, the author refers to Manaus in order to. Now, this was the question which was very deceptive in its term. Most people raised objection also, but they were left empty-handed because if you read the passage very carefully, the idea is intrinsic to it. Now, let us go by the option. Explain how urban areas help the environment. Appears like a neutral option with no flair and pomp and show, and most people wouldn't go ahead and mark this option also, but I find it decent enough to keep it close. And let's see other options, and we'll be applying elimination method in order to see what other options are saying, and if other options are not as effective as this particular one, we'll definitely choose this. But I will not throw this option out because it is clearly said that how urban areas help the environment, because it is clearly mentioned in Manaus, people were cutting the trees. So government said give them jobs. So they got jobs. They have their own houses, and then they had their own houses. They become sustainable. So urban areas was helping the government. Now, second option is describe the infrastructure efficiencies of living in a city. This has nothing to do. This is a bait which was given to students. Many people would have fallen trap to it. Nowhere about infrastructure efficiency of living in a city has been mentioned. So this is clearly out of scope. Explain where cities source their labor for factories. So cities source their labor for factories from the village area, where it has been mentioned in the passage. Again, people would have gone and they would have thought that this particular option is correct. See, each and every option present in the passage has to be answered with the 100% information available within the passage itself. We don't have to consider anything outside the scope of the passage, and this particular option will be wrong in this way. Promote cities as employment hub for people. Now the game begins. A and D, what to mark? Promote cities as employment hubs for people. So Manaus mentioned in this particular aspect? Was it written somewhere else that cities are employment hub for people, and that is why people migrate to cities because they get a lot of employment? And then Manaus was mentioned. No, it was not mentioned. Manaus was stated as a particular example that look how did Manaus achieve this particular thing in order to curtail the effect of deforestation, that they give opportunity to work to its people, and they in turn got money to build their own houses, and then that reduced the overall dependency on the forest. So this option is also clearly wrong. I'll go ahead and mark this particular answer as A. Neutral, subtle, but perfectly fine. So some neutral options can also be correct because the other options are completely disaster. So this RC was very easy to read, but then it had a lot of deceptive answers. 2019 verbal ability was when um, Cat threw a surprise, and then it turned out to be difficult. Now let's come to the last question. From the passage, it can be inferred that cities are good place to live in for all of the following reason, except that they. So for all of the following reasons, cities are good place to live, and how are they? Do so, except X, we have to choose one thing that which does not contribute to the fact that it is a good place to live. Offer employment opportunities, perfectly fine, they do offer. Help prevent destruction of the environment, very correct, because it has clearly mentioned from Manaus, it helps prevent destruction of the environment. Contribute to the cultural transformation of resident. Now people were again confused here between C and D. Have suburban areas as well as office areas. So let it have a suburban areas and as well as office areas. How does it matter? Where do we get the idea that cultural transformation of residents is mentioned? It is in the last line. It is because cities offer more than just jobs. They are transformative. In the slums, as well as the office towers and leafy suburbs, the progress is from hick to metropolitan to cosmopolitan. So transformation is going on. Cultural transformation is going on, and hence this option is also supported. So the only option which cannot be inferred is this. And here we go. So this brings me to the end of the first passage. We'll quickly go to the second passage, which is also very interesting, easy read. It was one of the easiest passages as far as the question stem was concerned, because if you get what the idea was as far as this particular passage was concerned, the question was breezy read, but still people got it wrong. Let us see if we get the main idea, we'll be able to knock it off very quickly. For 2 years, I tracked down dozens of, the idea is missing some, Chinese in Upper Egypt who were selling lingeries. Now, the author says that for 2 years, I have been tracking dozens of Chinese people in Upper Egypt who were selling lingeries. And why did he? Why was he tracking? In a deeply conservative region. What is deeply conservative region? Upper Egypt is a deeply conservative region where Egyptian families rarely allow women to work or own businesses. The Chinese flourished because of their status as an outsider. Now the idea is very clear. The author says for 2 years he has been tracking Chinese in Upper Egypt who were selling lingeries, and it is a very deeply conservative region because Egyptian families rarely allow women to work or own their business. But the Chinese people who were selling lingeries, they flourished. They flourished at a greater cause. And the reason why they flourished was because of their status as outsiders. This is important. They were outsiders, so that is why they flourished. They didn't gossip and they kept their opinion to themselves. They didn't gossip much. They kept their opinion to themselves and they were keen to listen to what others were saying. And hence, their business was on fire, boss. In a New Yorker article entitled Learning to Speak Lingerie, I describe the Chinese use of Arabic as another non threatening characteristic. Now, what is another non threatening characteristic? What is one non-threatening characteristic? That despite the fact that that particular region is very extremist in terms of not allowing their women to go out and work, these people are selling lingeries and even then they are succeeding. The other thing is that these Chinese are speaking the native tongue. The native tongue, that is what I describe the Chinese use of Arabic as another non-threatening characteristic. So these Chinese were using Arabic, and this was another non-threatening characteristic. I wrote, unlike Mandarin, Arabic is inflected for gender. Now he says, unlike Mandarin, Arabic is inflected for gender. Means this particular line means that as far as Arabic is concerned, its words and uses clearly specifies which particular gender is being referred to. Like in Hindi, "वह जाति है" we say, so we know that "वह" is female. So in that particular way, Arabic is inflected for gender, and Mandarin, that is Chinese, is not. And Chinese dealers who learn the language strictly by ear often pick up speech patterns from female customers. So Arabic is inflected for gender. So people get to know the connotation that Arabic is, the gender can be specified from Arabic language. And these Chinese dealers who were selling lingeries, they learn the language strictly by ear. They learn the language by hearing and often pick up speech patterns from female customers. So they caught up the speech patterns from female customers. They didn't learn, but they actually caught it up from female customers. I have come to think of it as a lingerie dialect. Now he says that he has made the author says that I consider this as a lingerie dialect, and there is something disarming about this Chinese men speaking in the feminine voice. Disarming means something which is adorable. So now the author says that the main idea which is represented over there is, look, Arabic is inflected for gender. That when you speak Arabic, you get to know which gender is referred to, and Chinese dealers What did they do? They learn the language by hearing, and even and the author went ahead and said that even though these Chinese men are speaking in feminine voice or the Arabic, because they have learned it by ear, by hearsay, they appear to be very benevolent. They are disarming. Now see, when I wrote about the Chinese in the New Yorker, most readers seem to appreciate the unusual perspective. It was an unusual perspective because these Chinese are flourishing in the one of the Egyptian areas, and then they're doing really well. But as I often find with the topic that involves the Middle East, some people had trouble getting past the black and white quality of a byline. So some people had trouble. Most people appreciated it. Some people had a trouble with this article because this involved Middle East. This piece is so Orientalist. Now, the word Oriental is very important. Oriental means when a Westerner is writing for Middle East or Eastern countries. This is what Orientalism means. I don't know what to do. This is the criticism that has been said about the author's article. This piece is so Orientalist. I don't know what to do. Aisha Ghani, a reporter who worked at the Guardian, tweeted. Another colleague at the British paper, Iman Amrani, agreed. I would not have minded an article on the subject written by an Egyptian woman. Probably would have had better insight. Now, the other, the other one criticized and went ahead and said if an Egyptian woman would have written about this, that would have made more sense than him writing it. The other one said that this piece is so Orientalist. It stinks of Western ideology and identity about the Middle Eastern and Eastern countries. As a man of language, now author mentions himself, as a man of language, I also take issues with this kind of essentialism. I take issues with this kind of essentialism because this is very important. Empathy and understanding are not inherited traits. Very very important line. This is now going to be building up the idea of the passage. Now the author says empathy and understanding are not something which we get it from our parents, and they are not strictly tied to gender and race. Very very important. So we can't particularly say that this particular gender and this particular race is more empathetic in comparison to other. So it is not something which is inherited, it is something which is acquired. An individual who wrestles with a difficult language can learn to be more sympathetic to outsiders and open to different experiences of the world. Now it says that an individual who wrestles with a difficult language can learn to be more sympathetic to outsiders, as in this case for Chinese, because this Chinese, for them, this particular language, Arabic, was completely different. It was a difficult language, so they are sympathetic to outsiders because it's a difficult language for them, and they clearly understand the pain associated if an outsider comes and visit that particular area. What is he going through? And open to different experiences of the world. This learning process, the embarrassment, the frustration, the gradual sense of understanding and connection is invariably transformative. Now, this is very important. What does the author say? That since the one who live and get to learn a different language as compared to the one they are aware of, what does it do? It makes people more empathetic because they have gone to the phase of embarrassment, frustration, gradual sense of understanding, and finally connecting with the language. In Upper Egypt, the Chinese experience of struggling to learn Arabic and local culture had made them much more thoughtful. Very clearly mentioned what the above line was trying to explain. In the same way, I was interested in their life not because of some kind of voyeurism, but because I had also experienced Egypt and Arabic as an outsider. Another author says, just because I was surprised and wowed by it. It was not because of that I was interested in. I was interested in because I was also a kind of outsider, and I got empathetic to it. And both the Chinese and Egyptians welcomed me because I spoke their language. Now the author says that I was a multilingual, I spoke their language. Both of them accepted me. My identity as a white male was far less important than my ability to communicate. Very, very correct. Now this clearly mentioned what the author wants to say, that cultural identity or the racial identity has nothing to do with the kind of language one communicates with. This is what the essence of the passage is, and this particular line clearly captures it. And that easily lobbed word Orientalist hardly captures the complexity of our interactions. The word Orientalist is not sufficient enough to capture the complexity of what the author wants to say. Now he says why that word Orientalist is not capable. He explains it. What exactly is the dynamic when a man from Missouri, that is himself, observes a Zhejiang means from Zhejiang native. That means the people who are selling lingeries, native selling lingerie to an Egyptian upper Egyptian woman. What is the dynamic which we are talking about? If all of us now stand beside the same river, stand on the side of same river, speaking in ways we all understand, who is looking east and who is looking west, which way is oriental. So basically this is a very beautiful figurative speech. The main idea what the author want to convey from this line is that word oriental is not sufficient to describe the things which he feels, because now he says all three of us, we belong to different area and region, but we are able to communicate in one common language. And if we stand by a river and face in the direction of the river, we don't know where the east is and where the west is. And so the word oriental itself has no meaning as far as our language itself is concerned. For all our current interest in identity politics, there is no corresponding sense of identity linguistics. Very, very important. So even though there is identity politics is on rise, identity linguistic is not on rise. Means this particular person is a Chinese person, he can speak only Mandarin. This thing is not there. He can speak English also. He can speak French also. He can speak Spanish also. You are what you speak. Very important. You are what you speak. The words that run throughout your mind are at least as fundamental to your selfhood as is your ethnicity or your gender. Now the author goes ahead and says that the words which you speak reveals equally about who you are as much as your gender or the race from which you belong. And sometimes it is healthy to consider human characteristics that are not inborn, rigid, and outwardly defined. That is, he is talking about language over here. And now he'll further explain. After all, you can always learn another language and change who you are. Very, very important. So, what does he means to say? That look, don't associate any particular language with cultural trait or that particular aspect. Now, this was the basic idea which the author wanted to convey. Let's go to the question. Our basic idea is clearly poised. Now, we'll knock the questions off very easily. Which of the following can be inferred from the author's claim which way is Oriental? As of first go, the question appears difficult, but if you read the option, it becomes easy. Learning another language can mitigate cultural hierarchies and barriers. I like this option. I'll keep this on hold because it is everything which author wants to say. Which way is Oriental was a, as I clearly told you, which way is Oriental. What he meant was that if you can learn their cross cultural language and the experience of the other person, then you can't really distinguish that who the Orientalist is. So, learning another language can mitigate cultural hierarchies and barrier is one thing which I'd like to go. Globalization has mitigated cultural hierarchies and barrier. People would be tempted to mark this. And mind you, nowhere in the passage the word globalization has been mentioned. So this is a wrong option. It's a trap. Goodwill alone mitigates cultural hierarchies and barriers. Goodwill alone? Where is this mentioned in the passage? And even though if it is mentioned, goodwill alone is a very extreme word. Extreme. Apply the concept of broad, alien, narrow, extreme. This option is eliminated. We won't be going ahead and doing it. Orientalism is a discourse of the past from colonial times rarely visible today. This is completely bullshit. We're not going to mark this particular option. No way this option can be correct. This will be suicide if you go ahead and mark this answer. It is A, clearly visible, and hence this is the answer. A French ethnographer decides to study the culture of a Nigerian tribe. So, a person from France is going to Nigeria and he wants to study the culture of Nigerian tribe. Which of the following is most likely to be the view of author of the passage? What would the author of passage like to suggest to that person? The author would encourage the ethnographer, but ask him or her to first learn the language of Nigerian tribe if she wishes to study. I'll agree with this because the author clearly says because I am able to communicate in that particular language. So I'll keep this option on hold. If I don't find any more option which is more tempting than this, I'll mark this particular option. I'll keep this on hold. The author would encourage the ethnographer but ask him or her to be mindful of his racial and gender identity in the process. Completely against what the passage is saying. The author clearly says that the language barrier is not about racial and gender identities. This option is eliminated. The author would discourage the ethnographer from conducting study. This is clearly wrong. He won't discourage. So we won't read it further also. So this is completely gone. The author would encourage the ethnographer and recommend him or her to hire a good translator for the purpose of holding interview. Nowhere it has been mentioned in the passage that uh, you should take the help of translator. It is something which has been added. It is out of scope of the passage. So this option is also wrong. The only option which is correct is this. So see if you apply the point of elimination method, it is something which is very useful as far as this particular passage was concerned. This passage was not that straightforward because of the figurative quality of the language in which it was written. The questions were also tricky in the first sense, but if you read the option, it was clearly eliminatable. 4 on 4 was very easy. Now let's go ahead and see the third question. The author critics would argue. What author says that cultural barrier uh, can be breached by having a connect to language. What the author critics would say? Empathy can overcome identity politics. This is not what the author's main idea was. Language is insufficient to bridge cultural. I really like this option. I'll go ahead and mark this. But let me see that other two options. Linguistic politics can be erased. Let it be erased. How does it matter? Orientalism cannot be practiced by Egyptians. So what? Let them not be practiced. Why will the author critics would argue? The author main idea was that language is sufficient to bridge cultural barriers. So critics would be obviously negating that fact, and they will go ahead and say that language is insufficient to bridge cultural barriers. This is the particular option we'll go ahead and mark. Now we come to the last question of the day, and with this we wrap up our session. According to the passage, which of the following is not responsible for language ability to change us? This is very important. Which of the following is not responsible for language's ability to change us? So which does not contribute to language ability to change us. The ups and downs involved in the course of learning a language, very much it does, because it is clearly mentioned that Chinese, they went through lot of phases where they learn something and they feel embarrassed, and again they learn and slowly gradually they connect to the particular language and they become more empathetic. So definitely language is bringing change to us, so this option is correct. This is responsible. Language's intrinsic connection to our notion of self and identity, very perfectly fine, because it is clearly mentioned in the passage that there is a kind of the language which you speak. If you're able to speak the language of that particular region or type, you feel connected more. So there is an intrinsic connection of self and identity as far as language is concerned. Language's ability to mediate the impact of identity markers one is born with. Okay, mediate the impact of identity markers. Very correct. Language ability. Now, it has clearly been mentioned in the passage again and again, time and again. The author has said that language can breach cultural barrier. He says that these Chinese people, even though they were from China, they were doing really well in Egypt because they've learned their language, and they were doing really well because people feel connected to them. So language has this ability to mediate the impact of identity markers one is born with. So this is also correct. The twists and turns in the evolution of language over time. This has nowhere been mentioned in the passage. Clearly eliminable, very easy. So even though the three options were pain in ass, if you would have read the fourth option, you could have straight away got it that this is nowhere mentioned and this will be the wrong answer. And hence, like this, we come to an end. This passage was not that straightforward. If you would have gotten to the main idea, which was a single liner, you could have knocked off all the four questions. So sometimes what CAT does is that in an easy RC, they purposely set difficult questions, and for a difficult RC, they will set very easy question. We will see that in coming sessions. Till then, goodbye and take care. Best wishes for CAT.